Welcome back to channel Mr. Twilight, where we share chilling, terrifying, yet captivating horror stories together. Today, we'll dive into a topic that sends shivers down anyone's spine, especially after dark. Horror stories about being home alone. Most of us have probably felt that eerie moment of coming home to an empty house. At that time, even the faintest sound can make your heart race, and your imagination begins to spin terrifying scenarios. You've probably pulled the blanket over your head, waiting for your parents to come home, or rushed to turn on the TV and all the lights just to reassure yourself, it's fine, right? Story 1. Knocking at 2 a.m. Our first story takes place in a quiet suburban area in Ohio, USA. At the time, Emily was 17 years old and lived with her parents and 2 older brothers. She recalls a terrifying experience she'll never forget. The first time she stayed home alone. Emily's parents were attending a friend's wedding anniversary party and wouldn't be home until late. Her house was a 2-story building with a spacious yard, surrounded by few neighbors and eerie silence. Her brothers were away at college in another state and only came home on weekends. That night, Emily was completely alone in the house. As night fell, the place grew unnervingly quiet. The dim streetlights were far apart, and the occasional passing car made her jump. Everything seemed fine until the clock struck 11 p.m. Suddenly, the TV signal turned to static, the sound cut in and out, then went completely silent. Probably just lost signal, Emily thought. She got up from the couch, planning to head to bed. But as she stood, the living room light flickered a few times. A sudden wave of unease made her shiver. Climbing the stairs, she heard a rattling noise from downstairs. She froze and looked back, but saw nothing, only the stillness of the empty space. Must be the wind or something, she told herself. She went back down to check. The doors were locked, which gave her some relief. Upstairs, she shut her bedroom door and turned on the nightlight. It was around 11:30. She texted her mom to check in, but her phone showed message not sent. Maybe the signal was weak, or there was a network issue. Lying in bed, Emily tried to sleep. As she drifted off, she heard slow, deliberate knocking from downstairs. Knock, 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 her heart pounded. She glanced at the clock, 2:00 a.m. She peeked out the bedroom window. Under the dim glow of the streetlight, she saw a shadowy figure standing on the porch. The person wore a black coat and a hat. She couldn't see the face. Who would come to my house at this hour? She panicked. Seconds later, the landline downstairs rang loudly. The piercing ringtone echoed through the house, making Emily flinch. She crept downstairs and stood a few steps from the phone. Gathering her courage, she picked it up. "Hello?" she whispered, heart racing. On the other end, there was only silence, except for faint, raspy breathing, like someone trying to stifle laughter. Emily shivered and slammed the phone down. Right after, the knocking returned. This time louder, faster, more aggressive. "Bombay bug banj." Then came a hoarse voice from outside. "Open the door. I know you're in there." Terrified, Emily ran upstairs to grab her cell phone and call the police. No signal. She didn't dare use the landline again. Afraid the caller was still listening. The scene felt straight out of a horror movie. She locked her bedroom door and curled up, trembling. The banging continued outside, now mixed with eerie, maniacal laughter. Then she heard it, the crash of shattering glass downstairs. Someone had broken a window. Frozen in fear, Emily grabbed her baseball bat for protection. holding her breath as heavy footsteps creaked across the wooden floor. Step by step, the intruder was heading toward the stairs. Furniture was shoved aside. Emily frantically looked for a hiding spot. She crawled under the bed. Cramped and suffocating, her heart pounded wildly. The footsteps stopped outside her bedroom. Through the gap under the bed, she saw muddy black shoes. He opened the door and rummaged through the room, tossing items on the floor. At one point, he stood just a few feet from her. Her palms were slick with sweat, every sense on high alert. Luckily, he didn't find her. After what felt like a lifetime, the intruder gave up and left. She stayed hidden, holding her breath, until she finally heard a car rev up and drive away. At that moment, her phone buzzed, signal restored. She quickly called 911. Police arrived within 10 minutes. They found the broken window and muddy footprints. Once she calmed down, Emily told them everything. Her parents were horrified when they got home. But most importantly, Emily survived physically unharmed. Emotionally, she was shaken for a long time, haunted by every creak and whisper near her room. Story 2. The Ghost in Maine. Our second story comes from Daniel, a student living in London. Due to limited finances, Daniel rented an old room in a historic building on the outskirts of the city. His room was on the second floor with a balcony overlooking a quiet street. Peaceful at first glance. Everything seemed fine until Daniel got a message that his parents were heading back to their hometown to visit his ailing grandfather. That sparked the idea of spending the weekend at their old house. A little getaway to treat himself. But fate seemed to have something far more chilling in store. Daniel was not at all prepared for what happened that night. His family's old home was in a historic neighborhood in the north, a narrow terraced house with a small backyard. His parents had since moved into a more modern home, and no one had visited the old place in a while. With the old key in hand, Daniel opened the door. The familiar feel of the place hit him. So many childhood memories. Although most things had been cleared out, a few basics remained: an old sofa, a wardrobe, a single bed, and especially the hand-sewn curtains in the living room that his mother had made. Around 11 p.m., Daniel went upstairs to his former bedroom to look through some keepsakes. While rummaging through a cabinet, he suddenly felt like someone was standing behind him. He spun around. Nothing but a dark hallway. A chill ran down his spine. Something felt off. Minutes later, he heard a faint creak downstairs, like footsteps on old wooden floors. He paused to listen. Silence. Still, he decided to check it out. He walked around the house but found nothing out of place. The doors and windows were still locked. Feeling somewhat reassured, Daniel decided to go to bed, leaving only the nightlight on. But he couldn't fall asleep, so he scrolled through his phone to pass the time. Suddenly, a soft swish echoed from downstairs, as if someone had yanked the curtain. His heart jumped. He strained to hear. Then a whisper, barely audible, directionless. "Come here." Daniel jolted upright, sweat beading on his forehead. Grabbing a flashlight, he cautiously headed downstairs. As he reached the living room, he froze. The curtain was swaying gently, even though the windows were shut tight and there was no breeze. Behind the fabric, a tall, thin silhouette flickered, motionless. Holding his breath, Daniel stepped closer. "Who's there?" he asked, voice trembling. No response. His hand shook as he reached out to pull the curtain aside. But the moment his fingers touched the fabric, an icy chill shot through him. There was no one there. Or more accurately, the figure vanished the instant he touched the curtain. The glass window behind it remained closed. Outside, darkness loomed. Daniel collapsed onto the sofa, his heart pounding. Trying to calm himself, he turned on all the lights in the room. That's when he saw it, a handprint on the glass, foggy with condensation. Right where the figure had been. "This isn't in my head," he whispered. Next to the print were scratches, like fingernails scraping the glass. He tried to call someone, anyone, but his phone showed no service. The Wi-Fi had also cut out. He felt trapped inside his own childhood home, with something watching. Around 2 a.m., Daniel decided, "I have to leave right now." Suddenly, the window began to rattle violently. He turned just in time to see the curtain whip to one side, as if yanked by an unseen hand. In the gap appeared a pale face, half concealed behind the glass. Lifeless eyes stared directly at him. Daniel screamed and stumbled backward. He couldn't tell, was that face inside or outside the window? Then came a chilling voice. Don't go." Summoning all his courage, Daniel grabbed a baseball bat and slammed it against the window. The glass cracked but didn't shatter. The face vanished. The curtain dropped back into place. The house fell silent again. Without hesitation, Daniel grabbed his keys, bolted out the front door, and ran into the street. He flagged down a passing taxi, frantically telling the driver someone had broken into his house. The driver gave him a strange look but took him to the nearest police station. That night left Daniel with severe emotional trauma. His family soon decided to sell the old house and never return. Later, he heard from neighbors that decades ago, someone had died tragically in that house, and their restless spirit was said to linger there. Story 3. Calling in the Night. Our final story today comes from Oscar, a Swedish programmer living in Stockholm. He recalls the winter of 2019 when his parents went on an overseas trip, leaving him in charge of their spacious 3-bedroom apartment in the suburbs. It sounded simple enough, but in reality, the icy winds and snow, covered silence of a Scandinavian winter can create an unsettling atmosphere. Oscar, an introvert by nature, enjoyed being alone. Aside from the occasional trip to the supermarket, he spent most of his time gaming and browsing the web, thinking this was the perfect staycation. But he never expected that what happened next would leave him terrified of being alone for months. During winter, most of his neighbors were away on ski trips or vacations, leaving the building almost deserted. The hallway lights flickered dimly, and the old elevator occasionally got stuck between floors. The first week passed uneventfully, and Oscar felt relieved. But starting on the 8th night, he began to notice something strange. Around 1 or 2 a.m., slow, deliberate footsteps echoed through the hallway, right outside his door. At first, it didn't seem too unusual until the footsteps stopped directly in front of his apartment. Then, silence. No elevator. No retreating steps. It was as if whoever was there had simply vanished. Oscar brushed it off, thinking someone might have paused on their way to another floor. But it kept happening night after night. On the 4th night, he peeked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was completely empty, yet the footsteps rang out loud and clear. Then came the worst part. One night, as the footsteps paused again outside his door, he heard a whisper. Soft, fragile, and unmistakable, Oscar. Someone had called his name. Oscar froze. "Who's there?" he called. No answer. He opened the door, looked both ways, nothing. All the other apartment doors were shut tight. That weekend, Oscar stayed up late working. He started hearing more strange noises, faint scratching on the windows, the groan of wind through the cracks, untraceable yet constant. At about 4 a.m., he glanced toward the balcony. The streetlights cast a dim glow through the glass door, illuminating a blurry silhouette. To his horror, he saw the outline of a person on the glass, a thin figure with unusually long arms, standing perfectly still. The apartment was on the 5th floor. No one could have climbed up there unless he stepped closer and yanked the curtain aside. No one was on the balcony, but wet footprints marked the floor, clear and fresh, like someone had just been there. Oscar nearly dropped his coffee cup. That night, unable to sleep, he was jolted by the sudden ringing of the landline. Reluctantly, he picked up. A deep, unfamiliar voice spoke. "Oscar, are you still awake?" Chilled, Oscar asked, "Who is this?" The voice replied, "Can you come out to the balcony?" Then silence. Oscar hung up, heart pounding, and immediately turned off the living room light. He crept toward the curtain and peeked through a gap. Once again, a faint figure stood outside, facing the glass. Watching, he couldn't make out the face, but felt its unnatural presence. Panicking, Oscar shut the curtain tight, grabbed his phone, and called the police. Thankfully, his mobile had service. He reported a prowler. Police arrived and searched the building, but found no signs of a break-in or any suspicious individuals. On the final night, things reached a terrifying peak. Around 2 a.m., he heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in the lock. Then, a shrill voice shrieked, "Oscar, open the door." Fists pounded violently on the door. Oscar froze, overwhelmed. He tried calling his parents, but they were abroad and didn't answer. In a blind panic, he locked himself in his bedroom. The pounding continued, bang, 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 followed by the sound of nails scratching the wooden door. Then came eerie, high-pitched laughter. He thought about jumping from the balcony, but from the 5th floor, it was suicide. Suddenly, the pounding stopped. The apartment fell silent. Creeping to the peephole, Oscar looked out and saw a pair of blood-red eyes staring directly at him. He stumbled backward in sheer terror. The next morning, he finally dared to open the door. The hallway was empty, but faint scratch marks lined the front door, as if something or someone had clawed at it. Oscar packed his things and left immediately, staying at a friend's place. When his parents returned, they were skeptical of the story until they saw the claw marks on the door. Later, an elderly neighbor upstairs told Oscar, years ago, someone committed suicide on that 5th floor balcony. Ever since, people talk about hearing voices calling their names in the night. Oscar still doesn't know if what happened was supernatural or the work of a disturbingly skilled intruder, but the experience left him sleepless for weeks, needing therapy to recover. He shared, "You don't understand true fear until something haunts you in the one place you thought was safe." Although each story took place in a different setting with its own eerie twists, they all shared one haunting theme: the overwhelming fear of facing the unknown alone. Whether it's a supernatural force, a human threat, or a terrifying mix of both, the fear hits hardest when there's no one by your side. After hearing these stories, you might become a little more cautious when staying home alone. Or maybe you're thinking, Thea probably exaggerated. But whatever you believe, on a quiet, late night, if you suddenly hear an unexplained creak or glimpse a shadow passing by your window, what would you do? Would you dare to investigate or curl up in a corner, trembling as you reach for your phone? I hope this video not only gave you chills, but also left you with something to think about. A few helpful reminders to keep yourself and your loved ones safe when alone at home. If you've experienced a horror, story, or spine-chilling moment of your own, share it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. I'll keep digging up and sharing more mysterious, terrifying, and captivating true stories in the future. This is Mr. Twilight, wishing you a peaceful night.